Hey, welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, Episode 6. This week is a special edition with Matt from the SouthWest Backpackers as our special guest. And this episode, talking about emergency preparedness and how to best get yourself ready, is proudly sponsored by the SouthWest Backpackers themselves. And now, the two radio hosts who give the NSA constant constipation, here they are, Rick Chicago and Steve Johnson on the Terraforming Earth Network.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Today is March the 28th. Welcome to the show with the Southwest Backpacker. This is Rick Chicago and Steve Johnson coming to you from Earth Changes Radio, EarthChangesRadio.com. And Steve Johnson. Hi, Steve.
Very good morning, very good afternoon, very good evening. Great to have your company right here on Earth Changes Radio Episode 6, where we talk to Matt from the Southwest Backpackers about preparedness, emergency preparedness, and danger preparedness out there in the wilderness. Great to have your company. Are you there, Matt?
Hi, yes, I'm there. Thanks for having me on the show.
Do we have any first questions from Rick Chicago, in the studio here?
Welcome to our show, Matt. A very good friend of mine here in New Mexico, the Southwest Backpacker. One of my personal secret mentors, because I'm really envious of his abilities. Welcome to our show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Earthly. I'm glad to be on here tonight.
Yeah, one of, I guess, our first questions is, how is our watershed and the snow and the condition of our forests and the landscape here in the spring in New Mexico? Are we ready to get back out there, and what's the environment looking like?
Well, I'm certainly ready to get back out there. I know the wintertime has been really long. We didn't really get a whole heck of a lot here in New Mexico or within the Southwest. I know the Southern Rockies did, however, get quite a bunch of snow. And the very last storm that just came through yesterday had produced quite a bit of snow. They had shut down the Raton Pass into Colorado, so they did get quite a bit of snow kind of late. But as far as New Mexico, we're still, I would say, within a drought. I mean, yesterday we were up in temperatures of around 77, 78, and today we're down to 44. So we're hoping to get maybe a little bit of more moisture late in the season here, but it's been really late, and I think we needed more of that snowpack a few months ago.
Just a quick question here, Matt. Sorry, I just have a quick question. If we have a lot of snowfall, does that not relate to a lot of water when it melts out? I mean, you say we're in a drought, but we're getting snowfall in these particular areas. Does that not relate to actually turning into water eventually?
Well, it does certainly turn into water, and it is good and beneficial really for everything. I think specifically here in the local area where I'm at, we haven't seen any rain in the past several months. And right here where we live, everybody relies on the aquifer that is within the Rio Grande Valley here. And so if we're not getting that snowfall, that snow melt doesn't actually make it down into the aquifer. And so our local mountains did not see the snow melt and the snow precipitation that we actually needed this year.
Right.
And so, yeah, we did not really get the benefits of what we did in the year past.
I think that one of the questions that is on most people's minds is this question of bugging out into the forest or bugging out into the wilderness, into the mountains, or escaping society. What does it take, just on an average, let's say that, well, for example, when we go, we only go for 4 or 5, 6 days, maybe not even that many. But these people are going to be out there for a week. What kind of things are they really going to need? They're going to have to, there's a lot of predators, and they come in a lot of shapes and sizes. There's water. You need a clean, sanitary place to be able warm to lay down and sleep. So, you know, people think that this is something you just throw a backpack on and you're good to go.
Yes, well, it definitely depends. When you mention bug out, the type of bug out situation that we're talking about. If it's something where you're going to go out and practice for maybe when, the shit hits the fan kind of a deal, I think what you would really want to do is, if you were going to be out, you're going to want to figure out how long you want to be out for. And you're exactly right about your core gear. I mean, the very first essentials that you are going to want is water. Water is going to be the number one thing that's going to keep you alive. And it's got to be clean, sterile drinking water. Now, there is a bunch of different ways that you can go about sterilizing it, but essentially you do want to sterilize it and purify it so that you don't get sick. There are many bacteria out there and viruses, although viruses aren't really known to be in the waters here of North America. There are some nasty bacteria in there that you don't want to consume.
So Matt, what are some of the things that you can do in the wilderness to get safe, clean drinking water? I mean, do you have to carry alum and a lot of specialized stuff? I mean, what does it take for someone to get water up there?
Well, if you're going to go out and you've got essentially just a backpack on and you're going to be out for, let's say, 10 days, I would recommend bringing either a pump filter or some type of a gravity filter where you don't have to work very hard in order to filter and purify your water. Now, I have had many different types of water filters and purifiers that I've used when I've gone out into the wilderness. One of my favorite is the Categorised Hiker Pro water filter. And essentially what it is it's got a carbon element on the inside of a paper wrap that's on the outside. And this thing will filter down viruses and bacteria. And it's been around for a long time. It's sort of the standard that backpackers use when they go out. I would recommend something like this because you can take it to any water source and pump your water and basically have enough to keep you alive and going. Now, they don't work all that great in really nasty, muddy water. So in a situation like that, you might want to let your water settle down and, all of the sediment to go down to the bottom before you try to pump it. But that is one way that you can actually filter and strain out the crud that's in your water.
How do you remove the tannic taste that comes out of streams and rivers in the mountains?
The tannin taste is a little bit hard to get rid of. I have found really the best solution is activated carbon. Some people call it activated charcoal. If you go down to your local Walmart, you can even go down to the pet supply store. They've got activated charcoal in the fish section. And you can buy a container of this. And if you're crafty enough, you can make a cylinder that would fit in line with the tubing that you would use for your filter. And if you can run this water through the activated charcoal, the activated charcoal does a really good job at taking out tannin and any kind of heavy metals that might actually be in the water, pesticides, things like that, because the activated carbon is so incredibly porous down to a microscopic level that it will strain out stuff that even the water pump didn't get to.
What do you think about the Sawyer personal water straw? How effective are those? Are those any good? You just throw one in your backpack?
Yes, yeah, I actually like the Sawyer products. There is what's called the Life Straw, which I think is the more popular one that people hear about and see. It also works the same way that the Sawyer filter works. It's all based on the same technology that they use for blood dialysis. It's got a bunch of tubes on the inside with little microscopic holes through there, and you're basically straining your water through this kind of technology. Both the Life Straw and the Sawyer work the exact same way. One is more personal, where you would actually take and walk down to a stream or a lake and try to drink from it, and that's the Life Straw. There's no real way to hook up tubing or anything to it. You basically pull it out of your pocket, find your water source. You got to kind of kneel down and get close to the water and drink from it. Yes, it does work, but it's a little bit awkward drinking that way.
And how many gallons of water will that treat? 10?
I don't exactly know on the Life Straw. I know on the Sawyer filter, they've got a bunch of different models, but the one that I have is the Sawyer Squeeze, and it has a 1 million gallon guarantee. That's quite a bit, and I think the reason for this is when the filter starts to get dirty from the stuff that you're filtering, all you simply have to do is push clean water back through it, and it removes all the crud that was building up inside of the filter. It's really, really easy to clean, and if you keep doing this each time you're done with the trip, that Sawyer filter is going to last you, I'm sure, 1 million gallons, but I may never actually get a chance to find that out.
What do you think? Someone here in the chat room has written, use iodine tablets or boil the water. Does boiling the water, is that enough?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're just gonna, if you want to do it really simply, boiling your water is going to be probably your easy and best bet. I can tell you by experience, depending on where the water source is, when you boil the water and let it cool down and go to drink it, it has a very funky taste to it. And I think that's because there isn't a whole lot of oxygen in it. And I've experienced that with lake water a lot more than stream water. So if you are going to boil your water, you might want to try and find a water source where the water's actually moving. But it does actually work. It'll kill the viruses and bacteria 100%. Boiling your water is great. Iodine tablets also work very well. And I used to use that in those Nalgene canteens. You know, you drop one of those iodine tablets, you wait about 30 to 45 minutes for it to dissolve, and then you're pretty much good to go. And they have some kind of a secondary tablet in there to sort of get rid of the iodine taste, but you still kind of get that taste of iodine when you drink it. So if you're willing to accept that, the iodine tablets work very well if you can't get a fire or if there's fire restrictions, something like that.
You know, Matt, hold on, Earthplay. A couple of months ago, I decided with my partner that we would go on an adventure just for a weekend away, 2 days away, camping, and everything that we needed to bring with us would have to be sorted out by the evening. It was a spur of the moment, let's try an experiment to try and live off the land and going camping off the grid with everything we take with us that we can fit in a car we're going to take for 2 days. And I thought of everything. It took me the whole night to think of a contingency. If something fails, then I've got a backup for that. And if that fails, I've got a backup for that. So I brought contingencies for everything, and I still found there were still things that I had not thought of. When I got out there for the 2 days that I was out there, it was an amazing weekend. I really, really enjoyed it amongst the valleys and the wilderness and the national parks. It was great to get out there and get away from all the soup of the electromagnetics. But there's still things that people need to think of, even though they thought of everything. That's the lesson I learned when I went out there and realized, my God, it's so cold. You know, I should have brought more blankets or something else. Is there advice you can give to people about how to prepare yourself for and like something like that? Just an immediate, let's practice emergency right now. and see how people respond. Is there advice you can give to people when doing that kind of experiment?
Well, yes, absolutely. And your story is sort of exactly where, what I talk about. It's, I think as far as giving advice to people who are going to jump out at the spur of the moment, before you actually do it, go out and try it for yourself, just like you did. I mean, you don't really know until you go out and do it, and if you're going to do it in a safe environment and do it as sort of a practice, because you'll figure out exactly what you need and what you don't. I can tell you that you do want your water. You've got to have your water. You also need your food. You're not going to live more than about a week without any kind of food. And so having food is also a good priority. Shelter, whether it be a tent or even a simple tarp, shelter is extremely important. If you get caught out in the elements and you get into a rainstorm, or if it's blazing hot outside and there's no shade, the risk of dying from exposure is pretty great, and that is, I think, one of the top three killers of people that go out into the wilderness. Is they're simply not prepared for the conditions and the climate and the weather that they're in. I always carry a windbreaker with me, even in the summertime, because if nothing else, it blocks the wind. But if it's cold, it also protects me slightly and gives me that extra shell as some of a layer.
Well, isn't that like half of the game right there? Is your clothing, the way that you're dressed, and what clothing that you choose to wear, your boots, even down to your socks, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, your clothing is super important, but I don't think that you have to go out to REI or the North Face or any of those, high-end expensive places to get the gear that you're looking for. Really, dressing in layers is going to be your best bet, because if you get too hot, you can take them off. And if you get too cold, of course, you put them back on. I think what's important is, if you're going to be carrying this stuff around with you, you want to go lightweight as possible. So, you don't necessarily want to take your big, heavy hunting jacket with you if it's, in March and it's going to be a little bit chilly. You might want to take 2 or 3 lightweight long sleeve layers with you, and perhaps a hat or a hoodie or something that's much lighter, and it's a little more practical when you're going to be out romping around in the wilderness. The more weight that you carry, the slower you're going to be as you go, and the more you're actually going to burn up energy, and that requires food to regain that energy. So you want to go as lightweight as possible.
Well, what about other things like a saw or an axe, or you catch yourself hiking through the Rockies and you get caught up in a thunderstorm and it's raining, and you need to seek shelter and everything is wet? How do you start a fire, and how do you protect yourself from that environment?
Well, if you're out in the Rockies and it's pouring rain on you, and the chances of getting a fire going are going to be pretty slim. What I usually do in a situation like this, because as well as I do, we've been through a situation like this. The very first thing you want to do is set up a shelter so that you can get out of the rain and just kind of dry off and start thinking about what you're going to do from there. Usually what I'll do is set up a shelter, and if I'm going to make a fire, what I'll usually do is I'll start running around through the forest, and I'll look right underneath trees. That is usually where you're going to find the driest stuff, especially if it's thick forest, because the rain is going to most likely be shedding on the outside of the branches and not getting down, where the tree trunk is. You will more than likely find dry wood there. If not, if you take a knife and shave it down, you will eventually get down to dry wood where you can shave off enough pieces to get a fire started.
So do you carry an axe, a chainsaw, a folding saw? I know you carry all kinds of stuff, especially if you're anywhere near your truck. I think you have all three.
Yeah, absolutely. I typically don't carry an axe with me when I go backpacking. I do carry a saw, and the saw that I carry is called a Sven saw. That's S-V-E-N, Sven saw. It's made out of aluminum, and it's all pretty much, it's a two-piece type of saw that folds up onto itself, and it's basically one piece when it's all folded up, and you can stick it in your backpack. Fits very well if you lay it vertically in your pack. I always take that with me because sometimes finding firewood, especially around areas where people have gone to lakes and such, where people have, taken firewood that are right next to the lakes and the campsites, you usually have to break away and go out to the wilderness to get your wood. And at 10,000 feet, trying to bust spruce with your hands just doesn't work. So having that saw is actually a very good tool to have, and I highly recommend having some kind of a folding saw.
Yeah, and that thing has come in handy so many times. I wished I had the gear that you did. Also, not only just backpacking into the mountains for an overnight trip, but we've done day trips where you'll carry a day pack. And you don't expect to run into any kind of trouble. You're just out for the day, and you're going to hike out and come back to your car at the end of the day. But it's essential that you be prepared for just about anything that happens out there, from first aid to water to even an emergency shelter. So even if you're going out for the day, a day hike, what are some of the things that you really need to be carrying with you?
Well, here again, I think number one is the water. You definitely want to have water no matter where you go. If there are water sources where you're going to, that's great. You'll already be one step ahead of the game. In areas where we live, the water is kind of scarce, and so I always take water as my number one thing on a day trip. I think number two is to have some kind of a med kit, some kind of an emergency kit. Chances are the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to brush up against a rock, some kind of an abrasion, maybe a splinter or something like that. And so you're going to want to have something lightweight with Band-Aids, some kind of tweezers, things like that. The chances of you getting your arm pinned and having to chop it off with a Leatherman tool are pretty slim. And so you're probably not going to need some kind of a medical kit of that nature. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
A soldier kits protect you from the sun, protect you from the cold, protect you from the wind. Always carry a windbreaker. Maybe some wine, a flashlight.
Sunscreen. I think having sunscreen is super important no matter where we go, because the sun is a lot more intense than it ever has been, and it'll just burn you up. And even though you don't see it happening, 15, 20 years down the line, you definitely will, in the form of skin cancer. And so it's really important to protect your skin and to not expose yourself too much to the sun if you're going to be out there.
These altitudes rip the hide right off of you. Matt, tell the folks here a little bit about insects and predators in the forests and on the trails, and some of the things that you can use in the natural environment to protect yourself from some of these dangers.
Sure. I know here in our local area here in New Mexico in the Southwest, a lot of the insects that I run into usually aren't until around April or May. And a lot of them are going to be your desert dwellers. You know, your rattlesnake, for example, is the common one that everybody fears and knows about. We do come across those, and we do see them. And you certainly could use them as food if you absolutely had to. But I don't recommend messing with them whatsoever. I mean, they don't want to mess with you.
I was trying to lead you in the direction of using cedar in your gear and in your sleeping bags, your sleeping area, how to make cedar side. And when we were in the high altitude at 10,800 feet on the Sandia Peak, weren't you telling me that you could use aspen or something, tree barks for sunscreen?
Gotta look out for chiggers.
I believe that was James that might have mentioned it. I've heard something about it, but no, you're absolutely right about the cedar. It's got a lot of multiple purposes. The cedar is actually used for natural bug repellents, and also used for inside the house is like natural mothballs. You know, you don't have to deal with that mothball smell. Cedar bark is perfect for it. It's also a really, really good natural fire starter if you need to get a fire started and you don't have anything to use but flint and steel. You can throw a spark on that and get a fire started if you absolutely needed to. Or if you found a piece of broken glass, you know, and you had the sun at just the right angle, you could get that thing to smoke just enough to be able to blow it into flame and get a fire started with it.
Yeah, and out here in New Mexico, we have all kinds of different kinds of trees and lumber. We have camped in juniper forests, cedar forests, pine forests. Tell the people kind of how each of these woods burn, because some of them pop and throw huge cinders out into the forest, and others are more tranquil. And can you talk about the fires a little bit more and how to start fires?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that most people know what a cedar tree looks like, and cedar, I think, is one of those really good multi-purpose trees. The firewood itself, when you cut and split a piece of cedar, it splits really well. It flies off like a toothpick, and you can actually split a bunch of cedar just using a pocket knife and tapping it with another piece of wood. It works really well. So if you're going to get a fire started, I highly recommend trying to find cedar or juniper, its cousin. That really is the go-to, in my opinion, for actually getting the campfire started. I also think pine. Pine is something that's also very common everywhere. And pine has a lot of sap in it, and a lot of people, at least around here, refer to it as fatwood. And fatwood is nothing more than, you know, your tree that is saturated in sap. And so you've heard about those big mega fires that have happened out here in the West, you know, in the past 10 years. All of these forests out here are fatwood forests. And so they're completely saturated with fat. Once you get them lit, you can't really turn them off. So if you're going to use wood, I think pine is a really good one to use because it will catch easily, and the sap that's naturally inside of the wood is also waterproof. So if it happens to get wet, you can simply just wipe it off and put a lighter to it, and chances are it'll just light right up because it has so much sap in it.
Yeah, we're right on the half hour, and you're listening to Terraforming Earth Network presents Earth Changes Radio, Episode 6, with Matt the Backpacker from SouthWest Backpackers. And we'll be right back after this short message break.
Sometimes at night I worry about the state of the world. And then I remember I'm listening to Earth Changes Radio.
Hi, I'm Charlie Brown, and for Snoopy's sake, Listen to Earth Changes Radio. So much better than sticking your tail in a light socket. Listen to Earth Changes Radio.
Hello, I'm Bubba Glee, and you're listening to EarthChangesRadio.com. Listen along, EarthChanges.radio on Pal Talk. Come along, listen along to Earth Changes Radio. Earth Changes Radio. Earth Changes Radio. Join me, Bubba Glee, and everyone along. Join along and have a really good time discussing Earth changes at EarthChangesRadio.com. EarthChangesRadio.com. EarthChangesRadio.com.
Hi, my nick is Our Daily Dose, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio on the Terraforming Earth Network, the most insightful information radio you will find anywhere. Get your daily dose of truth here.
Hello, my name is Susan, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com. Great show.
Hi, this is Rick Chicago. You're listening to me and Steve Johnson on Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
With over 150 million registered users, PalTalk is the largest online chat community in the world. With over 300 PalTalk support staff speaking dozens of languages to help you enjoy your online experience. Meet new people across town, country, or continent while chatting about your interests. Sing live karaoke, listen to music, join a lively political debate, or play group trivia in one of thousands of chat rooms in various categories from your PC, your tablet, or mobile device. Joining PalTalk is free and easy. Go to paltalk.com and become part of our friendly community today.
So hi, I'm Love is Light, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Yeah. Hi, I'm the King of the World, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on Paltalk with my dog Khan. Listen to him. What's going on?
My name is MW, and I have found peace from horse shit.
Well, you certainly have to be part of the group. Well, you don't have to be part of the group. That's what this is all about. You can be yourself and be yourself as most excellent that you are in this world and beyond. We've got Matt, the backpacker from SouthWest Backpackers, and of course our co-host, Mr. Earthplay, Rick Chicago, live and direct, coming to you on Earthplay Radio, EarthChangesRadio.com. Go ahead, Earthplay.
Thank you for that, Steve. I'm sorry I stepped on you. Wasn't watching the clock there at the bottom of the half hour, but if you're listening to this audio or watching this video and all the cool little narrations that our editors have put into this video, you can join us live every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time at paltalk.com. We are in the Ancient Observatory and the Earth Changes Radio chat room. And do you want to add in on that, Steve? Questions? Yeah, we can get to questions right now. So welcome back, Matt. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
How did you like our little half-hour break?
Sounded great. You guys got some great jingles going on there.
Yeah, we encourage everyone in our chat room and everyone who listens to our videos on YouTube, when you find this YouTube, hey, send us a jingle, send us something, cut us a little MP3, and we'll be happy to put it on the air. So traditionally, at the end of the half hour, we allow the chat participants from paltalk.com to actually come to the microphone and engage our guest, or if they have any questions or any comments they'd like to make. We're going to invite you to put your hands up right now, and Steve is going to moderate this segment of the chat participation. And thanks to everyone for being here. I think I'm going to have to drop the mic. Is that right? Go ahead, Mindy's. Can you hear there?
Well, I think I think that using salt is actually a good thing to use on wounds if you have it available. Iodine also works really well, but salt will actually kill out any of the bacteria that might be inside of the wound itself. I also know if you don't have any kind of a Band-Aid or anything on you, if you can find tree sap, just a little bit of tree sap to smear over your cut will actually stop the bleeding and seal anything from getting inside your wound to get it infected.
I'd actually like to chime in on this because if you carry an onion, and I like to carry like lunch meat and cheeses if I'm able to carry stuff like that, and I'll carry minced onion with me. And you can find them wild in the wilderness. Any kind of an onion, a chive, a clove, anything that's like an onion will actually draw out any infection and any cuts and wounds. It's good for insect bites, bee stings. There's a lot of natural things and remedies that you can do. Of course, a lot of people don't carry an onion into the wilderness, do they, Matt?
Well, no, definitely they're not going to be carrying an onion with them. I mean, you certainly can go out and look for wild onions out in the wilderness, and I have definitely found them out there. I've never actually tried that myself before, but I know yellow yarrow is very well known, and that is remarkable for cuts, different kind of insect bites. I remember getting stung by a bunch of hornets one time, and really the only thing I had around was the yellow yarrow, and it was growing all over the ground. And so I had picked that stuff up and just sort of crushed it in my fingers and applied it to all of the bites that I had. And it definitely helped to relieve the pain. And so, natural things that you can find, I think are really good. It's good to kind of know the whereabouts of where you are, because you don't want to use something that you don't actually know. So you want to research it before you actually go out and try something like that.
So you mentioned using tree sap and other things to help with first aid. Are there other kinds of plants or things growing in the forests and in the wilderness? I know that in the desert we have cactuses everywhere, and you can use that. But I've never heard of using tree sap. Is that really safe, or do you have to use a particular tree?
Well, I think, around here, of course, the pine tree is the most common, and it's the one that's oozing the most sap. And so I typically will try and go for a pine tree. But yes, it's completely safe. There's nothing that it's going to harm you with. It's, really sticky stuff, but you will seal up the gap and stop the bleeding if it happens to be a pretty significant wound. You can seal up the wound quite well just using that pine sap. I don't think that I would try and go for any kind of exotic tree that you don't know about, because the sap in certain types of trees might potentially be irritating or toxic to the skin, but pine sap, I think you're totally good to go with it.
What about if we're walking down a mountain trail and the tree in the brush is very thick, and this has happened to all of us, and you cut your leg or your arm on a tree branch or snag it on something through the forest, and you rip your arm open, do you leave that wound open? You clean it with fresh water and with some iodized salt? You leave the wound open, or would you go as far as to suggest get out the needle and thread?
Well, yes, hopefully you have a first aid kit with you in a situation like that. And yeah, if you do end up gashing yourself a little more than just a cut or an abrasion to the point where you think that you're going to need stitches, I think really the best bet at that point is, yes, try to clean the wound out the best you can with clean water, with your drinking water, and you know, wrap that wound up and so that it's not bleeding. I would not try to treat something any more than maybe a ½ inch with the pine sap method. You know, if you've got something bigger than that, it's going to require medical attention, and you're going to want to get out of wherever you're at and try to get some medical attention and get that sewn up. If
the blood is going to attract predators from insects to larger mammals also.
It certainly can. It certainly can. And if nothing else, I mean, if you're bleeding out and you can't stop the bleeding, you're going to be in a bad situation at that point where you will not be able to take care of yourself. So stopping the bleeding is going to be your number one priority. If it came down to it and all you had was a needle and thread and you could not get to medical attention, sewing up your own wound, if you had to do it, you would probably want to sterilize your needle with your campfire and get it cherry hot, you know, because you don't want to get any kind of an infection. But, you know, that kind of stuff is very last resort, and I couldn't imagine that most people would end up in a situation like that.
Okay, Steve, do we have questions from the chat room?
Yes, sir. We have a question from Mindy's mom who wants to know, is using egg white as a cover for burns, is that a good idea because it's water soluble? It can actually cover up your burn and to help the healing process as well, using egg white. If you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, or if you've got no aloe vera or any other dandelion or any other tincture, could you use an egg white as a cover for a burn, maybe half-cooked or raw?
Yes, I think egg white would definitely work as far as covering up a burn if that was all you had. Yeah, when it comes to burns, really, if you just have some water on you and run water over the burn until the burning stops, or at least it backs off a little bit, that's really your best bet when it comes to burn. If you have egg white as some type of a cover, most certainly that'll help kind of keep the moisture in and not let it dry out. But you would still, I think, want to periodically run some water across the burn. When it comes to like second and third degree burns, of course, you're going to want to have medical attention.
Can you use cactus, Matt?
Well, it's possible to use cactus. I would be very leery of the type of cactus that you use. There are so many different species of cactus out there. Some might be very helpful and beneficial, and others might actually irritate and make the skin even worse. I know that aloe vera, of course, is a wonderful plant to use for any type of burns. It's got that natural vitamin E that's inside the spines of the leaves. Here again, I think yarrow would also work by crushing it up and just sort of laying it over a burn. It would at least help take some of the pain away. I don't know if it would keep moisture in, but something like that I think would work well. Your best bet is to keep water running over it. That way the burn doesn't continue to go inside the skin.
And what about dandelions? There's a lot of talk in the chat room about the use of dandelions. Have you had any experience with that?
Well, I have not had any experience as far as using dandelions for burns. I have used it as far as eating, as far as natural edibles that you can eat out in the wild. They're actually quite tasty, but have never tried to use it for any type of medicinal purpose.
So what is actually exactly is yarrow?
So yarrow is a ground cover that you'll find throughout the entire United States, and I wouldn't doubt if you'd find it in other countries as well. They look like tiny little ferns growing on the ground, and they have a very strong scent to them when you crush the leaves. When you take a yarrow plant off the ground and kind of smash it up in your fingers and smell it, it's very strong like sage. But one of the uses that you can use with yarrow is you can boil it up as a tea. You can take the entire thing, roots and leaves, and boil it up in a tea. And it's supposed to work very well for if you're having rough digestion and whatnot.
You've ever showed that to me?
I've never actually had the chance to use it or have the need to use it. I've tried it before, and the tea is actually pretty good. But I have been hiking with people who actually showed me that, and so I got to experience that from somebody else, and I thought it was really awesome. And it did take away the indigestion that I was having. So I learned another use for yarrow.
Oh, that's really interesting. Steve, did you have another question for Matt?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen a lot of these shows coming from the United States just recently, like Naked and Afraid, where they plant people millions of miles from anywhere in the middle of a jungle and put them out there to try and get by and survive on the things that they have. They usually tap out because they usually like too skinny to survive any further, and a lot of them actually can't last that long. But one thing, my question is, how, in your opinion, how important is it to know how to survive off the grid, in case of a disaster, a type emergency where we have to rely on that? And how, in your opinion, how close is it to becoming that kind of society where we have to rely on living off the land? Can you see that happening in the near future? Go ahead, Matt.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we definitely need to change our ways as a society and as a planet as a whole if we're going to sustain ourselves in the future. And if we don't, a lot of bad things are going to happen. I think if you are going to try and live off grid for the long term, it's a completely different lifestyle. It's a complete change of life. You no longer are going to go to that job that you would go to, 40 hours a week and, live the way that you would be living today, so to speak. You would be working every single day pretty much for yourself and or for your family. One of the ways that you would be doing that is you would have to find a way to heat yourself. If you were going to go out and say, buy yourself a shed, a tough shed, a little wooden shed that was already pre-manufactured, and get yourself a little piece of property somewhere and set it up. That is totally doable, and I think people are going to do it. But I don't think people really understand how difficult and tough it is to pull something like that off, because you are going to be working for yourself and you're going to be taking care of yourself. So solar, for example, you're going to need some solar panels in order to provide some kind of electricity to be able to boil your water, or even to just power some type of lighting, things like that. You're going to have to find ways to heat your home, and you're not going to be using anything on the grid like natural gas. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll be able to get a hold of propane and whatnot, but more than likely you're going to be burning wood of some type. And so people that actually do this and live off grid spend 6 months or more every day going out and just cutting firewood, bringing it back to their property and splitting it so that they have enough firewood to get through the wintertime to stay warm, especially in colder places like the East Coast or in other countries.
Yes, sir, and anyone who's ever split firewood knows exactly what it's like and what it takes to keep yourself warm for the winter. They've got the same ant mentality of collecting over the summer so that they can absorb and live long and prosper through the winter. That's the kind of mentality that's needed in people, is to realize what it takes to survive in this day and age without the modern day resources that we take for granted. Wouldn't you agree there, Earthplay?
I sure do. And I have another question for Matt, the Southwest Backpacker. And you can go to his YouTube. He has a YouTube channel. Matt, you want to tell him about your YouTube channel real quickly here?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me over at YouTube. In the search box, you can just type in the Southwest Backpacker, and my channel name will come up. Otherwise, it's www.youtube.com/user/crazytales. And I will leave a link in the chat box for everybody, just in case they want to go and check that out.
Okay, and we're quickly running out of time here. God, this hour has just gone by. Matt, do you carry weapons with you into the wilderness? And if you do, why?
Well, most of the time, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm going to be out on a 7-day backpacking trip, chances are I'm not going to carry any type of firearm with me, only because that is a long distance to carry weight that I'm probably not going to end up using. One of my rules of thumb is if you're going to bring it with you in the wilderness, you better use it, except for your first aid kit. Hopefully we're not going to be using that. But, the idea is if you're going to bring it out there, put it to use. Otherwise, you're just dragging extra weight around with you.
So why do you wear a gun? And what circumstances and hikes warrant you wearing a gun? Are you afraid of predators, bears, cats, coyotes, wild dogs? Why do you carry a gun?
Well, the places that I'm going to carry a gun are typically going to be places where people are going to go, only because wildlife starts to get used to human beings. And when that happens, they become more of a threat. The chances of them coming into your camp and trying to get at your food are going to be much greater. And that's when things become a lot more risky. If you're going to go out into the wilderness where hardly anybody goes, you would be lucky to be able to see a bear for 3 seconds before it saw you and turned around and ran off in a blink of an eye. So it really depends on where you're going to go. But if I'm going to take a firearm with me, typically I'm going to go and take a firearm where there's going to be a lot of people, because I'm really more afraid of the two-legged creatures than I am the four-legged creatures.
Hey, come on, son. You've been carrying that gunfire there because you've been hanging in those Constitution-free zones. That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah. We've had quite a lot of fun and a lot of... we've gone to a lot of places. Matt, what are some of the places that... we've gone together and that you've gone and that you like to go? Like you just did the Utah. We're running out of time here. The Utah River trip, tell us about some of your experiences.
Yeah, so I just finished about a year ago, but I finished an 11-day canoe trip down the upper and lower stretch of the Green River out in Utah. And that section passes through the Canyonlands National Monument. And it was absolutely epic. I highly recommend, if you guys are interested in doing it, it's a very cheap trip and you get so much out of it. But it was absolutely fascinating. I mean, you got big canyon walls. You've got your sandbars where you can camp at night and be next to the water. We got caught up in a massive rainstorm and got to see a flash flood happen right in front of us, where, the entire canyon basically turns into this desert waterfall wonderland where all these water sheets are coming off of the cliffs right into the water where you're paddling. It's just absolutely surreal. But we've gotten a chance to go up to the Continental Divide Trail. I've section hiked probably almost the entire New Mexico section, and want to do more of it up in Colorado and then some, and hopefully one day to through hike that entire trail. But that's on my bucket list. Pecos Wilderness, another great high elevation place where you can visit a bunch of different high elevation lakes where you can go fishing, things like that. But yeah, there's so many different places. The Quebradas, I know you've mentioned the desert place that we go to just south of Albuquerque here.
Yes.
A really nice place where you can just hang out in sand dunes and get away from the forest if you wanted to be in a warmer environment. That's a wonderful place to go.
Yeah. How long does it take you to plan for an 11-day trip? I noticed you guys were eating like high on the hog. I mean, how much food and how long did it take you to plan all that out?
Well, typically it takes me about a week to plan everything out. And usually what I will do is ask myself, what am I going to eat for breakfast each morning? And I try to keep it simple. I'll usually do something like oatmeal or granola bars, where it doesn't take a whole lot to prepare it, you know. Lunches, same kind of deal. It's going to be stuff that is foil packed and sealed, or trail mix kind of a deal for lunch. And then dinners, they've got a bunch of the freeze-dried meals. Mountain House and Backpacker's Pantry make a bunch of full meals that you add boiling water to, and you kind of let it reconstitute. Those are the kind of meals that you would take out on a 7-day trip because they're super light and easy to pack. But they usually take me about a week to kind of understand, you know, exactly how much I'm going to be eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, of course, you want to snack along the way because you're burning calories. And so granola bars are a great thing. Trail mix, beef jerky, things that have protein are a really good lightweight thing to bring with you. Also, with beef jerky, you can rehydrate it in water and soften it up and make stew with it. So beef jerky is one of those great multi-purpose foods that you can take in the backcountry.
Wow, delicious. Well, Matt, I want to thank you personally and as a friend for being here on our radio program tonight and participating at paltalk.com. It's great having you here. Do you have any last words?
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. I greatly appreciate being on the show, and thank you guys for listening to what I have to say. If you get a chance, like I said, head over to YouTube, check out my YouTube channel. A lot of the stuff I talk about, I do a better job actually showing you on video. So go over to YouTube, and my channel is www.youtube.com/user/crazytales. Thank you very much, Earthplay. I greatly appreciate being on your show this evening.
Okay, and we'll let Steve close out the show, and we hope you hang around in our chat room for the post-show when everybody gets to come up to the mic, and probably a little bit more chatter and a little bit more specific questions. And again, thank you, Matt. Take it away, Steve.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir.
Thank you.
Well, Matt doesn't realize it yet, but he's about to spend 13 weeks in the Atacama Desert on the courtesy of Earth Changes Radio as an amateur geologist at a seismic station. But he doesn't realize that yet. But that's what being a guest of Earth Changes Radio is all about. You take the punches for the guys, you know. Prepaid, did we say that? No, he's going to pay for that himself. But that's okay. But he's already agreed to be a guest on the radio show, so we're going to have him back here again, whether he likes it or not, because that's the way the contract crumbles. I'm sorry about that. No, I'm kidding. But we do thank Matt, and we certainly hope he's a regular guest here on Earth Changes Radio. This is episode 6, talking all about how to be a prepper, how to be prepared for the world changes, for the earth changes that we're seeing happen around us, underneath us, and above us right here on planet Earth. You take care. God bless, and we'll be back again next week, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern on the Terraforming Earth Network. This is Steve Johnson and Rick Chicago signing off, saying thanks very much, take care, and bye for now.
Kia ora. You're listening to Earth Changes Radio with Rick and Steve on Terraforming Earth Network.
Satellite radio broadcast, a new radio broadcast system. Here's my mix.
Hi, this is Hillary Clinton, and you're listening to TrumpRighteousNation.com.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hunter, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on the Terraforming Earth Network.
Rachel Hunter? Oh, hell no. Rachel Hunter?
Hello, my name is Michael Kane, and you are listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Hi, I'm Susan, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio.
Hello, I am Inga from Sweden, and I am listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Hi, I'm John Lennon, and you're listening to Earth Changes Radio on paltalk.com.
Hi, my name is Edie Amin, and you're listening to the Flat Earth Society from the sphere of the universe.
Trouble containing yourself from laughing out loud at the president. It's a sad situation. Too much poppycock here in Washington, D.C. Poppycock. I got a hop, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Ciao.
Watershed and the snow and the condition of our forests and the landscape here in the spring in New Mexico. Are we ready to get back out there? And what's the environment looking like?
Well, I'm certainly ready to get back out there. I know the wintertime has been really long. We didn't really get a whole heck of a lot here in New Mexico or within the Southwest. I know the Southern Rockies did, however, get quite a bunch of snow. And the very last storm that just came through yesterday had produced quite a bit of snow. They had shut down the Raton Pass into Colorado, so they did get quite a bit of snow kind of late. But as far as New Mexico, we're still, I would say, within a drought. I mean, yesterday we were up in temperatures of around 77, 78, and today we're down to 44. So we're hoping to get maybe a little bit of more moisture late in the season here, but it's been really late, and I think we needed more of that snowpack a few months ago.
Just a quick question here, Matt. Sorry, I just have a quick question. If we have a lot of snowfall, does that not relate to a lot of water when it melts out? I mean, you say we're in a drought, but we're getting snowfall in these particular areas. Does that not relate to actually turning into water eventually?
Well, it does certainly turn into water, and it is good and beneficial really for everything. I think specifically here in the local area where I is, for maybe when, the shit hits the fan kind of a deal. I think what you would really want to do is, if you were going to be out, you're going to want to figure out how long you want to be out for. And you're exactly right about your core gear. I mean, the very first essentials that you are going to want is water. Water is going to be the number one thing that's going to keep you alive, and it's got to be clean, sterile drinking water. Now, there is a bunch of different ways that you can go about sterilizing it, but essentially you do want to sterilize it and purify it so that you don't get sick. There are many bacteria out there and viruses, although viruses aren't really known to be in the waters here of North America. There are some nasty bacteria in there that you don't want to consume.
So Matt, what are some of the things that you can do in the wilderness to get safe, clean drinking water? I mean, do you have to carry alum and a lot of specialized stuff? I mean, what does it take for someone to get water up there?
Well, if you're going to go out and you've got essentially just a backpack on and you're going to be out for, let's say, 10 days, I would recommend bringing a either a pump filter or some type of a gravity filter where you don't have to work very hard in order to filter and purify your water. Now, we haven't seen any rain in the past several months. And right here where we live, everybody relies on the aquifer that is within the Rio Grande Valley here. And so if we're not getting that snowfall, that snow melt doesn't actually make it down into the aquifer. And so our local mountains did not see the snow melt and the snow precipitation that we actually needed this year.
Right.
And so, yeah, we did not really get the benefits of what we did in the year past.
I think that one of the questions that is on most people's minds is this question of bugging out into the forest or bugging out into the wilderness, into the mountains, or escaping society. What does it take just on an average, let's say that, well, for example, when we go, we only go for 4 or 5, 6 days, maybe not even that many. But these people are going to be out there for a week. What kind of things are they really going to need? They're going to have to, there's a lot of predators, and they come in a lot of shapes and sizes. There's water. You need a clean, sanitary place to be able warm to lay down and sleep. So, you know, people think that this is something you just throw a backpack on and you're good to go.
Yes, well, it definitely depends when you mention bug out, the type of bug out situation that we're talking about. If it's something where you're going to go out and practice.
Hey, welcome back to Earth Changes Radio, Episode 6. This week is a special edition with Matt from the SouthWest Backpackers as our special guest. And this episode, talking about emergency preparedness and how to best get yourself ready, is proudly sponsored by the SouthWest Backpackers themselves. And now, the two radio hosts who give the NSA constant constipation, here they are, Rick Chicago and Steve Johnson on the Terraforming Earth Network.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Today is March the 28th. Welcome to the show with the Southwest Backpacker. This is Rick Chicago and Steve Johnson coming to you from Earth Changes Radio, EarthChangesRadio.com. And Steve Johnson. Hi, Steve.
Very good morning, very good afternoon, very good evening. Great to have your company right here on Earth Changes Radio Episode 6, where we talk to Matt from the Southwest Backpackers about preparedness, emergency preparedness, and danger preparedness out there in the wilderness. Great to have your company. Are you there, Matt?
Hi, yes, I'm there. Thanks for having me on the show.
Do we have any first questions from Rick Chicago in the studio here?
Welcome to our show, Matt. A very good friend of mine here in New Mexico, the Southwest Backpacker. One of my personal secret mentors, because I'm really envious of his abilities. Welcome to our show, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Earthly. I'm glad to be on here tonight.
Yeah, one of, I guess, our first questions is, how is our water?
I have had many different types of water filters and purifiers that I've used when I've gone out into the wilderness. One of my favorite is the Katadyn Hiker Pro water filter. And essentially what it is it's got a carbon element on the inside of a paper wrap that's on the outside. And this thing will filter down viruses and bacteria. And it's been around for a long time. It's sort of the standard that backpackers use when they go out. I would recommend something like this because you can take it to any water source and pump your water and basically have enough to keep you alive and going. Now, they don't work all that great in really nasty, muddy water. So in a situation like that, you might want to let your water settle down and, all of the sediment to go down to the bottom before you try to pump it. But that is one way that you can actually filter and strain out the crud that's in your water.
How do you remove the tannic taste that comes out of streams and rivers in the mountains?
The tannin taste is a little bit hard to get rid of. I have found really the best solution is activated carbon. Some people call it activated charcoal. If you go down to your local Walmart, you can even go down to the pet supply store.